Hi guys, as you're getting on, Debbie will be in just a minute and we'll get started. Good morning. How is everybody? This is Amber I'm the president of Companion Parrots Rehomed, if you don't know me. Good morning, everybody. This is Amber, the president of Companion Parrots Rehomed. Debbie will be in just a second and we'll get started.
It is 11:01, 1 minute. I just realized I don't have my remote control. This is a first for us, doing a Facebook Live, so let's see how it works. It's not, we did one last week, but this is a first time I've done Facebook Live, so let's see what happens here. So we're here to talk about how we solve problems with parrots because we're at a parrot rescue, but actually we use this same science to solve problems with any living being. So it doesn't just apply to birds. You're going to get a lot of use from this today. So we call it the Toolbox class. What's in your toolbox? Strategies for problem solving. Amber, you may have to advance the slides. This class is sponsored by Companion Parrots Rehomed, and Companion Parrots Rehomed is about 15 years old now. It is a 501c3, and it's located at Parrot University in Pineville. Parrot University is actually a storefront, and it's a one-stop shopping experience for parrot owners. It's got everything you need from cages to toys to purchase food and lots more, including education. Tons of free classes are offered here, and I'll show you some of those in just a minute. My name is Debbie Foster, and I am a certified professional bird trainer through the International Association of Avian Trainers and Educators. I'm also a certified parrot behavior consultant with the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. I'm a co-instructor for Living and Learning with Animals, which is a webinar that is presented for professionals by Dr. Susan Friedman, and an instructor in the parrot division for the Companion Animal Sciences Institute. In addition, I own my own business called Parrot P's and Q's, and you can find me on Facebook and get all kinds of tips for how to care for your parrot and how to address issues you may be having with your parrot. If you can find Wendy to get
She's coming right now.
Cool. So we have a lot of different things that we do with our parrots. We've got a basic toolbox here. Can you set that one up for me? So diet is the first thing we're going to look at, and we have some information about what our diets for our birds should be, but we're going to look at that a little bit deeper because when you're having behavioral issues, they don't exist in a vacuum. They exist within an environment. So one of the things in the environment is going to be the bird's diet, and we'll certainly look at that a little bit more. Does your bird shower? A lot of people will say, my bird doesn't like to shower, and I'll say, well, send me a video of that. And what I see when I get that is a bird that loves to shower. They're actually doing a rain dance. Amazons are famous for that. And so people are just misinterpreting the bird's body language. But showers are important for the birds. No, I've just been hitting enter. But if you can get that set up, I would love that. Okay. Sleep. These guys sleep from dusk until dawn in the wild. So it's really important that in our homes we try to replicate that and get them as much rest as possible. And generally speaking, that means in a darkened room without a lot of light and sound and movement, so that they can really rest. These are prey animals, so it's important that they don't feel like there are predators going by. The next thing in our very basic toolbox is called, what are you looking for? Oh, yeah, that would help. Is enrichment. And this is part of our basic toolbox. This is not an advanced thing. We need to give our birds things to do, things to challenge them mentally so that they have things to keep their days occupied. If you think about it, in the wild, these guys are busy all day long. They're hunting for food, hunting for water, hunting for mates and nest sites. And so it's really important that we give them some sort of mental stimulation in our homes as well. And training is something that I would also consider to be a basic. Got it?
Yep.
There you go. Thank you. All right, so tip in my hand here. Wait a minute. All right, so training is also important. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. It can be as simple as teaching your bird to touch a target stick. And that is very, very good. It's a behavior that leads to many other things, such as going into a crate, or such as doing the turnaround, such as pushing a little car across a table, if that's what you want to do with your birds. Training is a basic requirement of being a good parrot owner. And then we really got to watch how we handle our birds. In the wild, these guys don't have a lot of tactile contact unless it's with a mate. And so when we touch our birds, if we handle them a lot, if we pet them a lot, if we pet them in an inappropriate manner, we can also add to some behavioral issues. And what I mean by an inappropriate manner is anywhere other than on the head. And especially you want to be very aware of petting them under the wings, down the back, and under the tail by the vent. And people will tell me all the time, well, my bird loves to be petted in those places. Well, I'm sure your bird does, but I bet they'll be frustrated eventually. So it's best just to keep the handling to a minimum. People that wear their birds tend to have birds that overbond to them. So if you've always got a bird that's on your shoulder, for example, that can be another red flag. So we really want to watch how we handle our birds. As I said, watch your hands, Buster. And I've got a couple of examples. You can see he's going right down that bird's back with the African gray. This is even worse. Okay, and you can see that the bird is showing signs already of an arousal. So we want to really watch that, and that's part of our basic toolbox. But you are lucky because you're empowered. If you are a client of Companion Parrots Rehomed and Parrot University, you have access to free classes, and that is a wonderful thing. These classes are based on the latest science. It's really important that you know the source of your information, which is why I gave you my credentials at the beginning of this presentation. One of my least favorite conversations starts with, well, I was on Facebook, because there's a lot of misinformation and harmful information on Facebook. So you want to be able to look at your source and to think critically about the information you're being provided. But you are empowered because we have a Parrot 101 class. We teach people what it's really like to live with a parrot. Just yesterday afternoon, I saw a highly experienced parrot person who teaches a lot of classes say, is there a deaf person that's ever had a lifelong dream of having a parrot? Have I got one for you? And I could just guess which parrot she was talking about. And it would look something like the one in this picture. And that's my bird, by the way. So Parrot 101 gives people a real life view as opposed to a Walt Disney cartoon view. Avian health and wellness. It's important to recognize what a well bird looks like and what a sick bird looks like. And one of the ways of doing that is by learning to read poop. Usually when we tell people that, they do a double take and look at us like, what? But poop is an indicator that the bird is sick, and it may be an early indicator that the bird is sick. As prey animals, these guys will hide the signs of illness until they are critically ill. And that means that we're really behind the 8 ball in getting that bird some help. So learning to know the signs of a well bird and a sick bird are really key. Fun with food. This is a wonderful class which teaches how to make a giant chop or mash based on all fresh foods. They use a ton of different ingredients in this. In fact, I saw them, what size was that container?
54 quart.
A 54 quart container they made last week for the birds in the rescue. And that will last them for a while, and it's beautifully frozen, so that's what I do at my house since I've got an only child there. But it works really well and it's healthy. Toy class, again, that enrichment. Some people will say, my bird doesn't play with toys. And I answer, sometimes you have to teach toy play. A bird who has not had toys in its environment and goes into a second home may still not interact with toys, but you can teach toy play. And the other response we get is, well, I don't give my birds toys because all they do is chew them up. And we say, great, that's exactly what they're supposed to do with that. I've heard people that travel and look at birds in the wild say, if you want to find the parrots, look on the ground, find the biggest mess possible, and then look up. And that's what they're going to be doing. They're shredding nuts and seeds and shells and leaves and bark. That's what they do. That's part of being a parrot. And then we also, in addition to this class, offer a basic avian behavior and training class. And that looks at the science of behavior and things that we can do to motivate our parrots to work with us and to learn from us. Great class there. So when I was conceiving the idea of this class several years back, I was thinking, okay, we've got our basic toolbox. What does a super toolbox look? So I decided, since my husband loves this type of thing, that I'd show an example of a super toolbox. Lots more room to put lots more tips and tricks in this toolbox than the other. If this doesn't work for you, then picture a giant jewelry stand that sits on the floor. So that'll do it too. All right, so we can always do better with our diet. Anybody can do better with the diet. I can do better with the diet. Everybody can do better with the diet because we're always learning more. We're always sometimes short of time, and so we try to put something in that maybe isn't as healthy, or we have people that feel sorry for their birds because they're not getting the same diet. But it's our responsibility as good parrot owners to give healthy food. I call it eating with toddlers. If you have a toddler and they say, I don't like green food, I'm never going to eat green food, you don't take that response. You say, okay, and you hide the green food in spaghetti sauce. You slice it and dice it a different way. You give it with a dip. You find all kinds of things. The biggest thing is that you are persistent. You continue to offer that food, and who knows, the kid could have said for 365 days, I hate that, and on 365 plus 1, it goes, ooh, my favorite food. So you just have to be persistent, and parrots are the same way. We don't know what the perfect diet is for our parrots, but by hedging our bets, by providing a huge variety, we can certainly hit more than we miss. So pellets, do you want to feed pellets? There's a kind of a debate going on right now. I do feed pellets because my schedule is very erratic, and it's a quick thing that I can throw in my bird's bowl, and it doesn't have to depend on how many hours it will be until I get back. My only word of advice for you is if you're using pellets, you might want to look at using the organic pellets. Look at things that are not heat processed because that leaches some of the nutrients out. Fresh food is what parrots would eat in the wild though, right? And again, we don't know what's perfect for each individual species of parrots, but if we give a huge variety. So I'm always looking at color because we know that dark, rich colors are more nutrient rich for us. So it stands to reason that would be true of our birds as well. So I'm looking at that. I am also looking at food as more than just something to eat, more than something just to provide nutrition. So I look at food as foraging, for example. If you give a bird a sugar snap pea, in order to get to the goodie on the inside, they have to go through the shell. Technically, that's foraging. It gives them something to do with their time. So a bird that has some feather destructive behavior, it gives him a different way of spending his time. You can't chew on a sugar snap pea and chew on your feathers at the same time. Those two behaviors are incompatible. I look at okra for the same reason. Anything with a bean or a pea hidden in it is a good foraging thing. I also look for food that is local and in season. And the reason I do that is because our food on average travels 2,500 miles to reach our table. 2,500 miles. It's usually picked before it's fully ripe because it's not going to stand the transportation very well. And so it's going to lose a lot of those nutrients. So I'm looking, say, what can I go to my local farmer's market and get? And by going to my farmer's market, it's fresher, but I probably also have a lot of options for using organic food. If pesticides are harmful to us at our size and our weight, how much more so would they be for our birds at their size and weight? So that just gives me a different perspective on it. That also means I'm looking at foods that are being grown in a particular season. I don't expect to find blackberries or blueberries at my local farmer's market at this time of the year because it's not the season. We're in the South, we're in North Carolina. It's not the season for blackberries or blueberries. Strawberries aren't available yet, but they're coming up soon, so I'll be looking for that for my bird as well. So veggies, fruits, grains, seeds, sprouts, those are all wonderful things that you can give your birds, either separately or as part of a mix called chop or mash. But I'm looking for a variety of all of those different things when I do that. Some of these things can be given raw, a few of them need to be soaked, and some of them have to be cooked in order to use that. So you just need to learn a little bit more, and I do have something that I'm going to show you from another rescue in just a second. And then treats. It's a natural part of life. We have treats too, right? Give me a piece of cheesecake and watch the kind of tricks I'll do for that. So if we have a treat all the time, every day, and I think right now probably a lot of us fall in that category because we're a little stressed out about this virus, so I know I'm eating more junk food than I usually eat. I try to be really aware of that, but right now, chocolate tastes really good, and I'm not even a chocoholic. But if we have a treat every single day, it's no longer special. It's no longer rare. And so that treat loses its motivational value for the animal. So if you've got something that your parrot would sell its tail feathers for, save it for training. Save it for those times when you need the bird to go back into the cage, for example. Make sure that you use the power of those treats by making them not readily available all the time to your birds. So this is from Phoenix Landing, which is another wonderful rescue. This is located in Asheville, North Carolina. And there's two different things going on here. You've got a pumpkin bread on the left. I like this because a lot of the birdie bread recipes start with Jiffy cornbread. Jiffy cornbread's not a really healthy food for our birds. In fact, it's not really healthy for us either. So this uses different things, and it's a small number of ingredients. You've got a can of organic pumpkin, applesauce instead of oil, unsulfured, that's important, dried fruits or nuts, and 2 cups of flour, but it's not your regular flour, it's a different type of flour, and ways of changing it up a little bit. And then their version of mash is on the other side. This is only one of the ones that they use. They do a lot of changing up with their mash. I couldn't get one of the other files to download, but this gives you an idea. Kamut, which is a grain, cinnamon sticks and turmeric. I love cinnamon sticks for my bird because it's a foot toy, and it also is something for him to chew and shred. A cup of quinoa, winter squash or sweet potatoes, fresh greens, jalapenos. Our birds love spicy things, and our birds also like sweet things. So any types of the fruits and vegetables that have a sweet flavor, or cinnamon has a sweet flavor. Red peppers, carrots, broccoli, pepitas, which are raw pumpkin seeds, garbanzo beans. It's interesting that this is in here because I had 2 clients in 2 weeks that told me that their bird worked for garbanzo beans. And in my head I thought, yeah, right, I have yet to see a bird work for garbanzo beans. I was wrong. Those birds worked absolutely amazingly well for garbanzo beans. They were terrible to get out from under my fingernails after the session was over, but they really did work for the garbanzo beans. And then any kind of chopped dry fruit, again, unsulfured with no processed sugar. And then you can add mixed frozen veggies. So this is a way that you can easily create it. When I create a chop or a mash, I look for variety, I look for color, I look for different members of the food groups, and I look for things that I can freeze well and then maybe add some flavor to it after I defrost it and give it to the bird. So I will save my spices and herbs for when I serve. So if a bird is having a hard time getting into mash, I might use cinnamon because, again, they perceive it as sweet, and that usually does the trick there. But this is just a good thing, just as a resource for you. Thank you to Phoenix Landing for letting us use that. Now, I hear this a lot, okay? Whatever your favorite food, our favorite food, I'm guilty too. I only give the bird 1 chip, right? Let's just do some math here, okay? This is from the Dorito bag, by the way, nacho cheese Doritos. Serving size is 11 chips. There are 140 calories. We don't even want to get into the fat grams and the sodium there, okay, which would be just huge. And this is done on a 150-pound human, okay? That's how they computed that. Well, if an umbrella cockatoo weighs 1 pound and you're only giving the bird 1 chip, how much is that out of sync? So we've got to be really aware of that when we're giving. I hear people, my bird loves pizza crust. Again, look at the serving size. That may not be the best choice unless it's extremely rare, very rare. I have never given my cockatoo a pizza crust. So recently I offered him a piece and he looked at me like I had a snake in my hand. He would not take it. I put it in the bowl. He did not consume it because it's not that he doesn't recognize that as food. All right, so an equivalent serving size of a chip is not just 1 chip for a bird. And if you do that, you run the risk of having a bird that definitely has health issues, weight issues, and we know that the bird's diet contributes to behavioral issues and certainly a lot of health issues. There are birds now that die prematurely because they have high cholesterol, because they have heart disease, and that ties right back to the diet most of the time. Now, let's look at our super toolbox and see what we can do too. Part of it is just simply understanding flock behavior. What do these birds do in the wild? Well, for one thing, they eat together, okay? They don't, one flies out and goes to Wendy's and another flies out and goes to Chick-fil-A and another orders from Domino's. They tend to eat together. They find the food, they eat together in the wild. And so we can actually tap into this as part of our super toolbox. If you're trying to get a bird to eat different things, then do it when you're also eating near the bird. I told you I feed my bird a lot of mash, a chop, whatever you want to call it, and I will also feed him what I'm having when I'm eating something healthy, like a salad or occasionally a stir fry. What's interesting to me is that he'll see me put the food in his bowl. He can see me put the same food on my plate, but when I sit down at the table, he is craning his neck in his cage, whistling, doing his contact call, like, hey, hey, what do you have over there? And until I take some food off my plate and walk it over and put it in his bowl, he doesn't stop that. But he is willing to try just about anything under those conditions. So if you're having problems with a bird eating healthy, make sure they eat with you as part of the flock. Foraging. Think how busy these birds are in the wild. They wake up around dawn, they kind of take it to see who's around, they start to look for food and water, then they have to fly long distances to find it, and then they fly back to a roosting site, they're preening, they're mating, they're caring for young, they fly out again in the afternoon before dusk so that they can feed and water again, and then they settle down around dusk, okay? Now think about what our birds look like in our home. We get up, and this is me, this is what I did this morning, okay? I get up because I was going to be gone for a number of hours. I put pellets and some seeds in his bowl, okay? Tonight when I get home, he will have his mash, and I'll give him some nuts in a shell at some point during the day today. Did he have to work for any of that? Absolutely not, okay? Well, unless you call walking across the cage working. So we can do better with that in our home. I am a huge proponent of foraging. Foraging can be as simple as moving where you put the food bowl. And that sounds like it would not be a challenge for our incredibly smart parrots, right? I always present the pellets on the right side of the cage at my house. I moved it to the bowl on the left side, and my parrot sat in the middle looking from one side to the other like, what the heck just happened? And what was interesting is for the next few days, he would go and check the bowls to see what was in them, to see where they had been moved to. So that's a simple way of foraging. It's probably the simplest way of foraging. But another thing can be just taking a strip of paper and laying it over whatever the food is, okay? Start really simple. One little strip of paper, maybe 2-3 inches long, 1 inch wide, put it over it. And that means the bird has to use its foot or its beak to move it aside, which is what a lot of birds will do in the wild. African grays, for example, scratch at things to uncover food. And then once they figure that out, I start to add more layers and complexity. So I will put a lot more food, once I know that they're eating it, a lot more food, a lot more strips of paper. I've got an umbrella cockatoo, which means I have a lot of broken toy parts at my house because that's what they're good at. So I save those broken toy parts, and I will take a handful of beads or a handful of wood chips, and I'll throw that in the bowl as well. So now they're really having to work at finding their food. which is mentally enriching for them. There's a certain physical element involved there too. And one of the best things I like is it's a time element. So with a bird that might have scarfed its dinner or breakfast in 2 minutes, maybe max, and it's taking them 5 or 6 or 7 to find all of the food in the foraging bowl, that's a bird who's not spending that deficit in screaming and feather destructive behavior. It's giving them something to do instead. Hanging out independently. We would not want a toddler who clung to our legs 24/7 going, mama, 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 mama. We would not want that. And isn't it interesting that we train our birds to do the same thing? We train our birds to want to be with us, on us, all the time. What we really want is an independent animal, including children. We want, there are people here with young toddlers who are getting this. So we want them to be able to amuse themselves, to play with toys in their cage, to forage in their cage, to do things outside of their cage that don't require us to be stuck like glue to them. That's really the definition of success for parrots in our home, I think. If your bird's shoulders, that's something that's interesting from a wild bird perspective. Generally, when you see birds parallel in the wild, it tends to be a mate bond, okay? So maybe that's not the best message for us to be sending the birds. The other thing you have to ask here is safety, all right? I want to see birds' body language at all times. They have the most diffuse, complex body language. I want to see it all. If they're on my shoulder, I really can't see it all. And when I turn to look, I'm putting my eye right up against that bird's beak. If it's a large bird, that could be a problem. So I would rather have a bird on my hand so that I can see all this beautiful body language than on a shoulder. More items. So if your bird never moves from the perch, if your bird sits there all the time, then it's time to get a little birdie boot camp going here. So some exercise options. 1, target training. I love target training. It's the first thing I teach all of my clients' birds. Any bird that I work with, I start with target training. Touch here, but then once the bird understands I'm supposed to track that target, then I can start moving the target here and here and here and here, and now I am running a marathon with that bird in the cage. So I've started to add physical activity to that bird, to his daily rituals. Running laps in the cage. Flapper size. Be really careful about this one, all right? The old-fashioned way of teaching flapper size was get a bird on your hand, clamp down with their feet, with your thumb over their feet, and then do like this, or figure eights, all right? That bird had zero choice about participating in that. I would be willing to bet there's a fairly high chance that a lot of people are going to get bitten the first time they clamp down on that foot, because the bird can no longer escape. It's going to poke with his beak there. So if your bird wants to do this and you can gently move the bird around, that's fine. I have been known to run through the house with my bird on my hand or my arm, okay? Just because he will lean into it, lift his wings just a little bit, and he likes it. How do I know he likes it? Because he stays on my hand. All right. Fly-tos. If you've got a flighted bird, then you can play baseball. You can play catch with your bird. Have one person send the bird, another person catch it, and then rotate the positions. They send it, they catch it. Our birds are meant to fly, and a lot of them don't in our home, and mine is an example of that. He's a wild-caught bird. He's probably at least 30 at this point. Wild-caught birds were not likely to have been taught to fly by their parents just because of the way they caught the birds. I've seen him fly, but only 6 times in 15 years. So I look for other options to simulate flight for him. We go outside on windy days when he's in his harness, or we put him in a carrier and let him sit outside and take advantage. And again, I see him lift his wings and lean into that. So that's another thing that you can do for an unflighted bird. Climbing up or down stairs. I taught my bird to do this early on. If you're 1.3 pounds and you climb 14 stairs to get from one place to another, that's like us doing a marathon. So that's an awesome thing to teach your bird to do. Bottom line is our birds are meant to be active, and in our cages they're not as active as they could be or should be, and they probably, we know that birds aren't really the best pets anyway. They're not domesticated, but we can ask, how can we give them a more enriched life? All right, also in our super toolbox, we have applied behavior analysis. And this is how we go about solving problems. And I really love teaching this. This is science-based. It's been studied across many different organisms. It's been replicated many different times. And it is our strongest tool for answering the question, what's going on? How can I make my bird stop doing that? Now, I hate the word that I used. I said, how can I make my bird stop doing that? So right away, that's the wrong mentality, because I should not be asking how I make something. That implies the use of force, right? I should be thinking, how can I encourage my bird to want to do this? What can I offer that the bird says, that would be an awesome thing to do there? So when we look at applied behavior analysis, we start with the antecedent. And the antecedent is what immediately precedes the behavior. And it doesn't cause the behavior. That's a fallacy that people have, but it sets the stage for the behavior to occur. And I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute. Okay, then we have the behavior. This is one that's always an opportunity for discussion. So when we use applied behavior analysis, behavior is a clear and observable behavior. It is something that because we can see, we can measure, which means we can say, is the behavior increasing or decreasing, right? But when we talk to people about behavior, instead of clear and observable actions, what we get are descriptive words. We get labels, we get constructs, and we get, and I just heard this morning, that bird is super sweet. Okay, that tells me nothing. Really, when you think about it, that bird's aggressive doesn't tell me anything either. So when we use these labels, we're not using the science to the best of our ability. We want to see behavior that we can see and describe in observable terms, because that allows us to change that behavior, okay? And the behavior obviously occurs after the antecedent. Hot on the heels, touching the behavior is a consequence, okay? And consequences do one of two things. They either have the behavior repeat in the future, or they decrease the behavior, okay? So two different things. And then we have a prediction of future behavior. This is one of the reasons I love ABA. If I can tell you, if you continue to do exactly what you're doing, you are going to get bitten every single time you do it, maybe based on that prediction, you might think, well, then we need to make some changes. And you would be right, okay? So antecedent, what sets the stage for the behavior. Behavior, clear and observable terms. We can measure the behavior because we can see it. Consequences, what either cause the behavior to increase in the future or decrease in the future. And our prediction of the future behavior if nothing changes here, okay? This is so cool that when I'm dealing with somebody having a behavior issue with a bird, which I do a lot of, I will sit down and actually write this down. Try that at home and see what happens. But what I want you to do is I want you to start with the behavior. Don't start with the antecedent. And I personally find that the fewer words you use, the better. We're not looking for a story here. We're looking for a nice, clean set of conditions, okay? So start with your behavior. Look to make sure you haven't used any labels. Look to make sure it's clear and observable. And then you can identify what precedes it, what follows it, and make your prediction. And that is going to give you enormous flexibility, enormous tools to use. All right, so you have to become a keen observer of your bird. And we want to talk about what we see the bird do, not what we think the bird feels, okay? We always want to think we understand what an animal is feeling, what they in their head, what's going on. But we don't. At this point in time, we do not have that ability. So what we need to do instead is we need to be a keen observer of that bird's body language. Do we see the bird, for example, if I ask for a step up, do we see the bird moving away? All right? So we can say that bird is stubborn, which tells us nothing, but seeing the bird is shifting its weight and moving away from our hand gives us a lot of information, okay? That's awesome. Is the bird leaning forward with an open beak? That also gives us a lot of information here. So I don't need to know what the bird thinks or feels or believes. I just need to know what the bird is doing. So I've got a series of slides here with birds exhibiting different types of body language. So I want you to be looking at these, thinking through this along with me. What do you see? Now, if we were going to label this, somebody's probably going to say that bird's aggressive, that bird's mean, okay? Again, we get no information from this. What do I see here? I see a bird that's leaning a long ways, really, really leaning. I see that the feathers on the top of the head are slightly raised. I see that the wings are also slightly raised. I would love to see the tail feathers on this bird to see if they're flared or not. This white is skin on a macaw, and some of the macaws will blush, and if you look just at the bottom there, you can see a slight pinkish red tinge. I can see also the black lines on top of the white. Those are feathers, and I can just tell that they are slightly raised as well. The beak is open, obviously, not wide open, but open slightly. The eyes are not pinning, which means the pupils contracting and dilating. So we look at this behavior, and it gives us a lot of information. Would I, for example, stick my hand up and ask for a step up right now? And the answer is, I don't know, because I would want to see what else is going on. Now, if there's somebody standing in front of this bird with a giant walnut, okay, you can see why you might get that same behavior. If a stranger came in and stepped up in the bird's face trying to get it to step up, you might get this behavior too, okay? But the consequences around it, the context around it are different. So we always have to look at the environment to see what else is going on. All right, so we've got an African gray here, and this, even though at first glance it probably looks like there's not a lot for us to talk about here, there really is. This is what makes my day. I love talking about bird body language, okay? So African grays will change the shape of their eyes. They can be really, really round, they can be slightly almond shaped, or they can be a very pronounced almond shape. And you can see that this bird is just slightly out of round, okay? Just a little bit out of round. The beak is closed. You can see that the feathers on the neck are lifted slightly, okay? But look at the beak. This is a really good thing for us to look at. Look right here, okay? Look at the beak. Do you see the shift in posture that's taking place, the weight shift? This foot is coming off the perch a little bit. The weight is not equally distributed. So I don't know what's going on. I took this picture, but I don't remember what was going on when I took it. I was wondering if perhaps somebody was asking for a step up, and the bird has to shift the weight in order to step up. Maybe that's what we're seeing here, okay? We don't know. We've got to look at the environment surrounding the behavior. This is, my bird's nickname is His Royal Highness Emperor of the Universe. His real name is Buddy. I named him that. That was a label, by the way. So I decided I was going to train him for a medical exam, and I got a cheap stethoscope off of Amazon, and this was the first time he had seen the stethoscope. And so with cockatoos, crest up can mean so many different things. It's ridiculous. It can be interest, it can be excitement, it can be fear, it can be aggression, it can be a novel object in the room, okay? I'm guessing it's the latter because he doesn't usually give me this body language when we're training, but this was a brand new training session. Now what I do like is he is oriented to it. This guy has a slight defect with his beak, so you never see him close his mouth all the way. So he's not lunging at it. His beak is not wide open like he's coming after it. It's not a bad bit of body language there with a novel thing in the environment. And by the way, the first time we worked on this, we got all the way to putting it on his wings and moving it around and into the chest. So that was pretty good. All right. So what we see the bird do. So sometimes we have unrealistic expectations. That's one of the reasons we offer Parrot 101 here. If you come to Parrot 101, somebody's likely to tell you, if you want a bird that never screams, go get a stuffed animal, okay? That's part of what birds do. It's part of how they communicate. So you've got to have some realistic expectations about what the animal's actually like. We don't expect a dog that will never bark under any conditions. That's just not realistic, okay? We might not expect that a cat would never claw the furniture. That might not be realistic. So we're going to have to adjust our attitude because nobody is perfect. Also, so we're going to take some examples. Screaming and biting are the two things that I'm called to homes for most often. Although I will tell you, right now I've noticed a shift in my behavior in my business, and I'm having people call me to come and help acclimate a new bird to their home. I love that opportunity because now we can head off behavioral issues. I don't have to worry about going and fixing something later and changing something that's become a habit with people and the bird. So I really like that. But screaming and biting are my two. So let's just take one more opportunity to look at this fabulous picture here and walk through what we see with it. Now this time we have a bird leaning a lot. The bird's beak is open as wide as it can possibly be, okay? We don't see the crest up, we don't see the feathers up on the nape of the neck, but we see a serious lean and a serious beak opening. Because I took this picture, I know exactly what this bird was doing, and it's probably the last thing on the face of the earth you would guess. The bird actually was yawning, okay? If we gave this bird a label, we're probably gonna say, woo, that bird is aggressive, that bird is going to bite. The bird was yawning. So when we look at behaviors, we have to ask a lot of questions. It's like being a detective. We have to ask questions so that we can get the answers to what we need. So the first thing we're going to ask is, where does it occur? Does it occur only in the cage, for example? Does it occur only in a particular room of the house? Okay? Where does the undesirable, from our perspective, behavior occur? I want to stop right there because I said undesirable from our perspective. From the bird's perspective, the behavior is not undesirable. The behavior is functional. It works for the bird. It gets the bird something or it gets the bird away from something. All right, so the bird does not think it's being a bad bird by screaming. It's screaming to get or to get away from something. So it's only from our perspective that the behavior is undesirable. When does the behavior occur? So if somebody tells me, every morning about 7 o'clock, this bird screams. Well, guess what? That's what birds do in the wild, all right? That's a normal, natural behavior for parrots. So that's an important bit to know. How many times a day does it occur? Is it once, twice, 3 times? I will occasionally have people say all day long. And my follow-up question is, seriously, so for 24 hours a day, this bird screams. It never stops. Of course, that's not the case. Which helps them to think, okay, no, it's about 30 minutes once a day between 1 and 1:30. That gives us some more information. We ran a behavior program for an umbrella cockatoo years ago who was having screaming issues. And so I got some volunteers to come in and I got them to take this data. I gave them stopwatches so they could time exactly how long the bird was screaming. And 3 incredibly observant people picked up the answer to this. And I'm not sure that I would have done that because I had already been here, looking at everything going on, and I didn't pick up on it at the time. What they realized is there was an African gray who was close to this bird, not visible, but audible certainly. And the African gray was going beep, 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 and the cockatoo was going scream, scream, scream. So we moved the cockatoo to the other side of the store. Guess what? Couldn't hear the African gray anymore, and the screaming decreased radically. Just brilliant that people picked that up. All right, what is the duration? I want to know, how long does the bird scream for without any interruption? All right, and here's a biggie. Why is the bird screaming? It's not screaming for no reason. Something is reinforcing that behavior. That's the consequence, remember. Is reinforcing that behavior, so we need to identify what's doing it. So for example, do you have a dog that's barking or howling while the bird is screaming? That's a possible reinforcer. Do you have a person who can't stand it and goes, stop that screaming? Definitely a reinforcer, okay? Do you, while the bird is screaming, this is a frequently recommended thing on Facebook. So your bird is screaming and you walk up and go, can you whistle? All right. That also reinforces screaming. Now, if you can wait for the bird to be quiet and then ask for a whistle, the bird can't whistle and scream at the same time, so that's the way to do it. But if you do it while the bird is screaming, you're reinforcing the screaming. That's something that we just don't think about most of the time. So all of these are really important questions to ask about screaming. And I will tell you, even if you say, well, I only say something to the bird every now and then, actually that hardwires that bird to continue screaming. It's called intermittent reinforcement, and it's an incredibly powerful tool. In this case, it's not working for you, but we're telling the bird, keep screaming, because eventually I'm going to cave in and come up and give you a treat, or give you some attention, or talk to you, or let you out of the cage, or whatever, all right? So even one time out of 100 can hardwire that bird to continue that behavior. So we want to be really, really, really aware of reinforcing that behavior and the power of intermittent reinforcement. All right, and biting, again, too common, the two big ones, okay? This is a really easy fix here. So if we look at this picture, all right, if we get bitten by a bird that's in a cage, what does that tell us about our hands? They're in the wrong place. If a bird cannot bite you or cannot reach you, a bird cannot bite you. So we just have to watch where we put our hands, and that's going to cut down on some of it. I've had a lot of people let a bird lean toward their hand and leave their hand there, okay? When a bird leans over to my hand, I take my hand away, okay? I want that bird to have the power to say, please move your hand, and lowering the body and the beak is a good way to say, okay, I will remove my hand. I want to give that bird some power. I want to give that bird control. I walked my bird on a harness and leash in the neighborhood, much to the amusement of the neighbors and the police officers who drive through, actually. But I was out with my bird one day, and somebody said, can I pet your bird? And I said, I don't know, you'll have to ask him. And so I talked to them about a way to approach the bird very slowly, very smooth body language coming in, and to see what the bird did. And what my bird did is he simply leaned away from them. And I said, what is he saying, yes or no? And they said, no. And I said, perfect, all right? I did have a retired Marine one time who decided that that was not good enough, so he kept coming, and the bird had leaned as far as away. He was against my arm and couldn't get any farther. And so he finally reached out with a closed beak and pushed the man's hand away. Perfect. And this guy still kept coming. And by this time I was kind of curious, and I know my bird, so wasn't too worried about it. And because the guy just kept insisting he wanted to touch the bird reached out and pinched. Didn't break the skin, didn't hang on, just a little pinch. And this big burly guy went, ow, ow, he bit me for no reason. Not so much, okay? And again, I wouldn't have done that with a bird I didn't know, but I know this bird. I can't even think of, maybe in 15 years I've seen 3 bites. He's going to default to his other behavior first. All right, so who gets bitten? Is it only one person in the house? That's always telling. Is it a child maybe who moves too fast around the bird, who's just got a lot of energy and they're running up to the cage? Is it a male or a female, a young, an old person? Who gets bitten? Is there any kind of a pattern and order to this that we can use? When do they get bitten? Okay, do they always ask for a step up? Is that the only time they get bitten? Okay. That's an important thing to know. Where are they if the bite occurs? Are they in the bird's cage again, in a bedroom, in a bird's where the bird sleeps at night? Where are they in the bird's environment when the bite occurs? How can the bird reach them? Because again, if a bird can't reach you, a bird can't bite you. So it may tell us that our hand is in too close a proximity to the bird. When I ask a bird for a step up, I will stand away from the bird. Depending on the bird, it might be just a few inches to it might be a foot, foot and a half. I will present a hand and also a treat, step up, and I wait for the bird to invite me into his space. So I want to see the foot lift, all right? When I see that, then I move very carefully in. As soon as the bird's on my hand, I'm going to reinforce the bird with a favorite treat, okay? I do not push against a bird. That's information that's still out there on Facebook. Pushing against a bird gives them 2 choices, step up or fall off. Not great choices from the bird's perspective, so I want the bird to clearly show me, yes, I'm willing to engage. It's a 2-way dialogue there. So we don't have to worry as much about being bitten if we're respecting the dialogue, if we're allowing them to say no, and then giving them a reason to say yes. What happens immediately after the bite? Okay, does the bird run away, fly away? Does the person fling to the bird to the floor? What happens immediately after the bite? So let's take an example here. Let me see if I can put this on there. No, did I? No, okay. So if there's a bird here named Bosley. She is the mascot for Companion Parrots Rehomed. And Bosley, if we were to give Bosley a label, we might say Bosley's opinionated. We've got somebody here who's, yeah, that's right. So she tends to prefer females over males, okay? She tends to prefer people with dark hair over people who have shaved heads or different color hair. It's quite interesting. She really likes women with dark curly hair, and it doesn't matter if she's ever seen them before. She turns into this big gooey mush and is blowing kisses at them. Okay, so if Bosley's cage is open and I put my hand in Bosley's cage, there's the antecedent, all right, what immediately precedes it, and Bosley bites me, what do I do with my hand? I pull my hand away, right? So the function of the bite for Bosley was to remove my hand from her environment. It works quite well for her, okay? Well, I don't like being bitten, so I don't want to do that again. So I have to say, okay, well, how am I going to change what I'm doing? I ask people all the time, what did you want when you put your hand in the bird's cage? I wanted the bird to come out. Okay, great. What happens if you open the bird's cage and take a couple of steps back? The bird comes out of the cage. Yay! Okay, everybody's got their needs met. You wanted the bird to come out. By opening the door, you gave the bird access to being out of the cage, okay? You wanted not to be bitten, okay? And the bird wanted not to have your hand in the cage. Everybody wins here simply by this dialogue and by looking at the ABCs that we talked about earlier. So, wonderful. All right, so time to practice with the ABCs. Remember, the antecedent comes immediately before the behavior. The antecedent is part of the environment. So it could be, again, me sticking my hand, I'm in the environment, sticking my hand in a cage. The behavior, what the animal's doing that can be seen, sorry this is too big, and the consequence, also in the environment, what will either keep the behavior going in the future or slow or decrease the rate of behavior in the future, and the prediction of future behavior. So if you're still with us, and you're thinking you're taking this class because you're having a problem with one of your birds, I would love for you to write this down now. Remember to start with the behavior, because if we start with the behavior, we're less likely to start telling a story. Again, I find the fewer words the better, because it's hard to tell a story with very few words. I just want to focus on the basics that I need here. Get the information that I need and nothing more. So if you can write this down, this would be wonderful. We're going to have some questions at the end of this if you're interested in doing that, and if you want to talk about your ABCs that you did, we'd love to do that. So I'll let you look at that and work on that. All right, so to wrap up, you've got your basic toolbox, which is good. It's got good information in it, but because of the size of our basic toolbox, we can't put tons of information in it. And we've got a super toolbox, which has a lot more information. And our super toolbox is based on science-based information, and that's always the best thing to do. You want to use the tools that you're given, and you can see this Amazon is using one of his own feathers to scratch his head, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so we really appreciate you coming to this class today. I know that there is a, I think Parrot 101 and Avian Health and Wellness class. One is today at
2 o'clock.
2, thank you, and one is tomorrow at 2. You need to sign up for those, so go to Companion Parrots Rehomed and sign up on Facebook or their website and sign up. Here's my contact information. You are welcome to send me an email or message me at Parrot P's and Q's on Facebook. I, again, work with people in their homes. Not right now, obviously, but I am working with people via FaceTime, Facebook Live. I'm working to learn Zoom, so we'll have some other things that we can do. Or we can also have a phone consultation. Companion Parrots Rehomed, which is who is sponsoring this class, is on Facebook and has a website as well, so please go to that. And the biggest thing is all of our animal rescues are in serious need right now. The traffic has slowed down, the people available for quarantining and fostering and adoption has slowed down as well, so it is a serious problem. So if you think that this class was worth something and you want to give them a donation, no matter how large or how small, that would be greatly appreciated, and there's the link to do it. All right, so let's see, do we have any questions?
I don't see any.
No questions?
Oh, what kind of cinnamon sticks?
Oh, I get organic cinnamon sticks, and they're rolled, so the birds really like to just peel it apart and crack it up. They're very hard, too. I can get those usually at places like Earth Fare, Trader Joe. Well, Earth Fare's closing. Trader Joe's, Whole Foods may have them. I think Fresh Market has them as well. They're not very expensive. It's just a good thing to keep on hand.
Okay, the Ceylon, I guess. Ceylon.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Yeah, that would be the best. The Ceylon
best,
cinnamon sticks. I don't know that I always see the type in the sticks versus the ground. We'll have to check into that.
Okay, let's see. Somebody from Arizona's watching.
Oh, hi, Arizona. That's one of the fun things about doing the class this way. When we have a physical class in here, we might have people from 2 hours, maybe as much as 4 on a rare occasion away, but doing it this way, we get to see people from all over everywhere.
Okay, I do have a question here. I gotta see if it will come up more. There we go. It says, my newly adopted mature cockatiel screams the behavior when I am out of view, and especially if he can hear but not see me. I wait for silence and then re-enter the room, and she puts consequence in the question mark. This seems to induce screaming because he starts up again when I leave the room again and after he had been quiet before I entered. I'm willing to be patient if this is just takes time. I just want confirmation that I'm not exacerbating the issue. Based on this limited information, am I doing the right thing?
That's a good question. I think you're on the right track. I would also, we didn't talk about antecedent arrangement in here. We should have talked about that. So I want to set the bird up for success. So if I can teach that bird to play with toys, for example, he's got something to do instead of screaming. Cockatiels are prolific whistlers, so my question is, does that bird whistle? And if the bird whistles, I might supersize reinforcing that while ignoring the screaming. Okay, the screaming gets nothing, but whistling gets my attention, gets interaction, gets me coming up to the bird's cage, but you just want to be really careful about not reinforcing the screaming.
Is that the same?
I'm going to close the door because it's starting to get loud out there.
Okay. Well, Gloria asks, how do I get my bird from eating a whole lot of starchy food and whole wheat bread?
Good question. All right, so
Don't give it to him.
don't give it to him. But, there are several schools of thought. There's the cold turkey. Don't give it to him. Okay, and see if you present that bird's food, whatever you're going to give, and wait, say 4 hours. Has the bird interacted with the food at all? And what I like to do is do something measured in some way so that I can actually see whether any of it's gone. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is change when you're delivering the preferred food. So when our birds get up in the morning, they're going to be motivated by hunger to some degree. I'm going to give the less preferred but healthier food in the morning, and I'm going to leave that in there 4 to 6 hours. And then I'll come in the afternoon and give a smaller amount of the less healthy food. If you're feeding a chop or a mash and you've got a seed junkie, another thing that you can do is you can sprinkle it with seed and press it down lightly. The bird's going to start trying to scoop the seed out of the mash and is accidentally going to get some of the good stuff with it. You could probably do the same thing with your whole wheat bread, crumble it on the mash and press it in.
Okay, here's a question from Diana. My Parrots Amazon is a male. He does well when mom works with him and gives him nuts, but is impatient and bit her on the wrist waiting for another nut. A few days later, he flew off the cage and bit her in the face. Do you think it's hormonal or will pass, or do you think he's starting to bond more with dad and is jealous of her?
Okay, there were a lot of labels in that, such as hormonal and jealous, so I'll just call that for your attention. I think when we have issues with our birds, almost everybody jumps to hormones, okay? And unless you want to get a whole lot of vet work, and even that I'm not sure is going to give you definitive answers, maybe we need to be looking into the environment instead. And something you started with kind of gave me a little inkling of what the answer may be. So you said waiting for a nut, right? So if the rate of reinforcement slows, we may see a frustration behavior in the bird. And in this case, it's looking like lunging and biting or flying. If we keep that rate of reinforcement really high for that bird without long periods of delays, that bird is more likely, by the laws of science, it's going to do what it has earned the most reinforcement, okay? So that's what I would do. I would try making sure that you're able to reinforce. Some people will only reinforce for a completed behavior. So if we're talking about the turnaround, it's the whole thing. Well, most birds aren't going to do that the first time, so we have to say, well, what am I going to reinforce for? I might reinforce simply for looking at my finger, all right? That's boom, good, give a reinforcer. I might look for that head turning just the least little bit, boom, give a reinforcer. I might look for a quarter turn, boom, give a reinforcer. I might be watching for that foot to come off the perch ever so slightly and be able to reinforce that too. And then shape that behavior all the way around. So instead of waiting however long it's going to take for a whole turnaround, now the bird's got reinforcers all the way around, okay? And that bird's likely to stay in position. If your mother is worried about being bitten at this point, I can understand, given her experience, why she might be, so I would suggest a couple of things. One, when I reinforce a bird on a perch, okay, I don't bring the nut to the bird, okay? I ask the bird to come to the nut. So based on the size of the bird, I kind of calculate in my head, how far can that bird lean, okay, so that it can just take the nut that's sticking out between my index and my thumb, okay, and get the nut. If I take it all the way and that bird wants to bite me, then it's right there. So if I do it here, it gives her a little more comfort zone. Second thing that she might be able to do is reinforce the bird by dropping a nut in a spoon or a food bowl. When you use the spoon, you've got the handle separating your fingers from the bird's beak. When you do the food bowl, there's not one in here, is there? I want you to, instead of presenting the food bowl like this, I want you to turn it like this, okay? So here's the opening of the food bowl. So that means that your fingers are kind of hidden by the lip of the bowl. The bird can clearly see the nut in there and reach it, but it's not going to get your fingers, okay?
Perfect. Okay, Josh asks, how do you deal with a bird that is super attached?
Oh, Josh, I would love for you to have me tell me what super attached looks like. Any chance you can write that in, and I'll come back to your question?
Okay.
What is a bird doing that gives you the super attached label?
Let's see.
And Wendy, remind me, if he hasn't responded, I'll go ahead and answer that as best I can at the end.
Okay. Recently adopted a baby Quaker. Any tips for raising a baby bird?
Yeah, so you need to make sure that you teach that bird to be independent from the get-go rather than this, okay? Teach the bird to sit with calm, attentive behavior on your hand. Be reinforcing that bird for doing that. Reinforce what you want to see more of, ignore what you don't, but remember you've got to kind of supersize that balance there. And I'll give you a little bit of warning. People, I think, have a little bit of a misunderstanding about baby bird behavior. So the label that might be most commonly given to baby birds is they're sweet. They're sweet. Well, most babies of all species are, right? Okay, babies grow up to be teenagers, like in the human world certainly, and a baby human and a teenage human have different behavioral characteristics, all right? So we want to shape what we want to see with any of our birds, understanding that there's going to be some changes as that takes place, but getting that relationship going so that they understand, you know, we are there to work with them as a trainer, but not as a mate is really important. Also check and see, I don't remember what the sexual maturity level is of a Quaker, but you want to be aware of whether your bird has hit puberty or not.
Okay. Josh has come back and said, meaning she wants to do nothing but be by my side underneath his neck.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Josh. So I want that bird to be able to be near me, but not on me. Give me 1 second. So, see this? All right. This is a great thing that you could put beside a chair, a kitchen table, a sofa, so that you're sitting by the bird. You can give the bird a toy to play with. You can give the bird a treat. You might give the bird a head scratch, but the bird's not on me. Now, I'm assuming that the function of that behavior for your bird is your attention, okay? I would also look and see how much are you touching the bird. Are you constantly rubbing the bird's head, for example? And you know now not to stroke it down the back or under the wings or the tail. But I would start to kind of wean that a little bit. I want the bird doing independent play. So if I had this stand at my house, this one doesn't have a lot of, it's got one screw right here. I would drill all over everywhere to hang things for the bird to do here. Okay, things to chew, things to shred, things to forage for, hidden treats all over here. So this would be a much better place for this bird to be than right here all the time. And if this has been going on for a while, it might take you a little while to do it, but you can do this, okay? And you might have to start with very brief periods of time. Can the bird play independently for a minute, okay? And then you can reinforce the bird for doing that. Let me get this out of the way before I run into it now.
Okay, Tara asked, my white belly kike wants to scream, and I was advised to cover the cage and wait 15 to 20 minutes to stop the screaming. Do you suggest this? And if not, what other suggestions do you have? I've observed when how just not sure how to word it quickly and shortly for this yeah.
I'm sending you a safely distanced hug for asking this question, because this is awesome. This is an example of misinformation on the internet, okay? And I did this too. A long time ago I did this, and my mentor called me on it. It took me a long time to figure it out, kind of an embarrassingly long time to figure out. So your bird is screaming, all right? We don't know what the function of the screaming is, but we can hypothesize it's for your attention, right? So the bird's been screaming. You walk up to the bird, right? And then you cover the bird. But remember I said the consequence touches the behavior? So what your bird got from screaming was your proximity and attention. The covering came afterwards. And how do we know that that didn't work? Because the covering had nothing to do with us, right? Your attention, your proximity kept that behavior going in the future. So what I'm going to tell you to do is find something that you can reinforce. For example, you can reinforce quiet. If your bird is being quiet, you can say, good bird, nice quiet bird, whatever, and give the bird a treat. If your bird likes head scratches better than a treat, you can offer that. You're still giving that bird attention, but for a more acceptable behavior from your part. And we can't expect for anything to wait for 15 minutes, okay? That's a very long period of time. People that use timeouts don't understand the concept of a timeout, so it's really not the best tool to use. I would say, what can you reinforce that you want the bird to do instead? When we have an undesirable behavior, we always we want to say, well, how can I make that bird stop? Wrong question. Right question is, what do I want the bird to do instead? So you answer that question. I want the bird to sit quietly for X amount of time. I want the bird to interact with a toy instead of screaming. I want the bird to whatever. And then you've got something that you can work with.
Perfect. Now, you might have answered it because Elsa has a comment. Arcania wants to always be with my 15-year-old son. That's his person. When not in the same room with him, he'll scream for attention. We ignore the behavior, but he can scream 15 to 30 minutes nonstop.
Something tells me after 15 to 30 minutes that your son might be going back into the room. I'm just guessing, okay? And if that's the case, then we know that is intermittent reinforcement and that the behavior will continue. So you're going to be really careful about that. I will stand outside the door and be really still. Don't want your bird to hear you out there. Be really still and quiet. And if you get that bird to stop screaming for, let's just say 3 seconds, 5 seconds, you go in and good bird, and you give it something to do. You give it a toy, you give it a treat, you give it a head scratch. And then you can start to build the distance, the time, the duration that you're waiting for the bird to be quiet for.
Perfect. Let's see. Lorraine says, can you share where Debbie's helpful videos are? Example, treat with a wooden spoon, etc.
Yeah, all of my videos are on Parrot P's and Q's. Lorraine's one of our adopters here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can look and see a lot of the things we talked about today on Parrot P's and Q's. There's tons of videos, there's tons of pictures. Sometimes I'll have a discussion. I actually have a discussion right now that I started yesterday on a video with body language, and it is some really good body language. So you want to check that out. And that was provided by one of our adopters here as well. Thank you, Lorraine.
Excellent. Well, any more questions? I don't see it anymore in our feed. Tara says thank you, and Desiree says hi.
Thank you, Desiree.
And I'll flip this out.
Are you going to give them a tour?
No.
Yeah, okay. So again, thank you for doing this today. We really appreciate the support of attending our classes.
We have a
and
question.
Again, if you want to make a donation, you've got the information.
Do you want to answer one more question?
Sure.
All right, this is our last question. It says, I have a 50-plus-year-old cockatoo, and I'm thinking of adopting 2 lovebirds. Obviously, they will be in different cages. Any advice? And just so you know, those 2 lovebirds currently live here at this facility.
Okay.
If it changes your answer, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question, and that unfortunately requires me to look into a crystal ball, which is not what a behavior analyst does. I would say slow and easy. Okay, your cockatoo is used to having a lot of your attention, and the lovebirds, I'm guessing, aren't as interactive as the pair I'm thinking about.
Correct.
Okay, so they kind of keep themselves amused all the time. With big birds and small birds, you always want to err on the side of safety. You don't ever want a lovebird, for example, trying to land on a cockatoo's cage and dropping through the bars. That could go wrong really fast. So safety is paramount there. Yeah, but and again, rather than using labels to describe what you're going to see, describe the behavior. Operationalize the behavior in clear, observable terms, and that will give you some information.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. And thank you so much to Debbie Foster for doing this today from Parrot P's and Q's. Make sure you follow her page as well, if she didn't already tell you that 8 times. And I hope, oh good. And I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We'll see you soon. Bye.